Saving the tragic male supporting role for the fourth time, I still failed to change his ending, the ending where he gave up his life for the female lead. After forcing a smile through the wedding of the male and female leads, he went home, took a knife, and lay down in the bathtub without hesitation. When I rushed back home, blood had pooled all over the floor. Thane lifted his head from the crimson puddle and gave me a devastated smile. Blythe got married. This time. I really can't hold on anymore. But seeing her happy, I'm truly glad for her. Watching his face drain of color so quickly, my eyes reddened, my voice trembling. What about me? He heard that, slowly closed his eyes, and let out a sigh-like final sentence. I'm sorry for you. The pregnancy test slip fell from my hand. He didn't know. I had already heard this sentence 4 times. But this time was different. This time, I was pregnant. Just last night, he had held my belly, gently kissing my ear. Wife, do you think our baby will be a boy or a girl? Unfortunately, that question will never receive an answer. In the system's alarm, my world was restarted once again. When I opened my eyes again, the 18-year-old Thane was cornered at the mouth of a familiar alley. Blood stained the corner of his lips as he looked past the group of people, and his gaze landed directly on me. The young man leaned quietly against the wall, his school uniform washed so often it looked pale, his face bruised. A few punks with hair dyed in all kinds of colors surrounded him, shoving him while hurling nasty insults. He didn't fight back, didn't even raise a hand to shield himself. His eyes remained fixed on where I stood. I had lived through this scene countless times. Every time before this, I had rushed over without hesitation, shielding him, scolding the punks, protecting Thane. But this time, my feet felt nailed to the ground. Because in my previous life, I had accidentally seen his diary. It turned out that in this bullying, the person he had always been waiting for, the one he hoped would pull him out of the mud, was the female lead. Not me, the one who barged in uninvited. No wonder he was the softest, gentlest male supporting role in the novel, born to protect the female lead. Even this young, his secret crush was hidden so carefully, leaving no trace. The system kept blaring in my mind, urging me to move. I took a deep breath and finally stepped forward. The punks noticed me and let out mocking snorts. One tilted his mouth and said, "Well, the simp is here again." Another chimed in, "What? She really thinks she's some kind of hero." I ignored them and walked straight toward Thane, crouching down. He raised his eyes to look at me, not surprised, only resigned, as if he'd already known I would come. I reached out my hand toward him and picked up the flatbread that had fallen in front of him, patting the dust off it. "Good, it's not dirty," I muttered quietly, taking a bite. It was still warm. Inside were the fried egg and lettuce I had specially added for him early this morning. Because he never ate breakfast, I would make something different for him every day. Chewing the bread, I looked up at the punks and said with a muffled mouth, "Sorry, wrong person. You guys can continue." For a moment, the entire alley fell silent, except for the sound of my chewing. Thane froze, those always gentle eyes showing confusion for the first time. His face went pale. He pressed his lips together tightly and turned his head away. I ignored him, munching my bread as I walked past him. When Thane stepped into the classroom right as the bell rang, a large portion of his clothes was already soaked through. He glanced at me, lips moving slightly as if he wanted to say something. I avoided his eyes, lifted my book to create a barrier between us, and let my thoughts drift far away. Back then, when I accepted the system's missions, I had chosen this supposedly simplest task without hesitation, redeem the gentle male supporting role. I naively thought saving someone who looked kind and gentle wouldn't be difficult at all. The first time, I approached him as a friend. I helped protect him from his drunken father's domestic violence, paid his mother's medical bills, and accompanied him out of his darkest days, watching him step by step become a world-renowned scientist. On the night before his award ceremony, when I proudly went to deliver flowers to him, instead, I received an invitation to his funeral. The last words he left me were, "I'm sorry." But what he left the female lead, Blythe, was a 3-page-long letter. Not only did it include blessings for her marriage, it also listed the birthday gifts he planned to send her every year, and even prepared a full-month celebration gift for her future child. The second time, under the system's suggestion, I chose to be even closer to him. Thane was an excellent lover. When it rained, he would rush over immediately to pick me up, tilting the umbrella toward me without hesitation, even if he got completely drenched. During my period, he would run out in the middle of the night to buy the desserts I craved and tolerated all my unreasonable moods. He would gaze at my sleeping face every morning, resting his head on his hand as he smiled, then gently kiss my forehead. I fell hopelessly in love with him and accepted his proposal. On the day of our wedding, I was full of joy and anticipation for the future. But when I woke up, the person holding me had already become a cold corpse. His hand clutched an empty pill bottle, tablets scattered across the floor. His phone screen was still lit, showing that moments earlier he had liked Blythe's post about her marriage certificate. I unlocked his phone and found dozens of unsent messages in the drafts, all wishing Blythe happiness. The third time. The fourth time. It was always the same. One moment, he'd be messaging me, "Wife, what do you want for dinner tonight?" And the next, when I rushed home, he had already jumped from the rooftop. Until this time. Just the night before, he'd kissed my belly, planning our future with me. I had already drafted my application to remain in this world until the end of my natural life. But after watching the male and female leads walk toward their happy future, as if completing some destined mission, he once again ended his own life. When I saw the bathroom stained entirely in red, the world I had been holding together finally collapsed. I had worked so hard, guarding every possible moment the female lead might trigger his despair. But I could never stop it. I finally understood. The gentle, sorrowful male supporting role who always waited silently behind the female lead in the novel was never someone others could save. I was truly exhausted. I couldn't save him, and I no longer wanted to try. That night, I submitted my application to abandon the mission. The system sighed heavily as it went to the higher-ups for approval. When the bell signaling the end of class rang, the homeroom teacher stood at the podium and announced that seats would be rearranged, letting everyone choose in order. When it was Blythe's turn, her gaze shifted back and forth between Thane and Vance. Thane kept looking at her, his fingers unconsciously gripping the hem of his shirt. "I choose Vance," Blythe said softly. Thane, who had been about to pull out his chair, froze mid-motion. He lowered his head, his shoulders sinking slightly as disappointment washed over him. I knew this scene far too well. In previous cycles, I would immediately walk over and deliberately say loudly, "I choose Thane," trying to protect his dignity in my own clumsy way. But this time, I glanced at the empty seat beside Ronan, the notorious campus bully, and walked straight over to sit down. Ronan had been dozing on the desk. The noise of my chair scraping the floor woke him up, and he glared at me impatiently. "What are you being loud for?" I ignored him and calmly organized my books. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Thane sitting alone by the window. The seat next to him remained empty, making him look sad and painfully isolated. When the bell rang again, Thane walked to my desk. "Sloane, why did you?" He had just begun when Ronan came charging over like a storm. "Sloane, lend me your math homework, now!" Ronan yelled, reaching out to snatch my notebook. Thane suddenly stepped between us. A flash of displeasure crossed his usually gentle face. He shoved his own homework into Ronan's hands. "Use mine." Ronan blinked, then muttered a quick, "Thanks," before slumping back down to copy. When the bell for lunch sounded, students poured out toward the cafeteria. Thane remained standing where he was, his gaze following me. I knew exactly what he was waiting for. In the past, every lunchtime, I would take out 2 lunch boxes on time and hand one to him. His mother was bedridden with a severe illness, and he had to work after school to support the family. The previous times, his pitiful state had softened me every single day. But this time, I walked straight toward Ronan. "Weren't you treating me to lunch?" Ronan scratched his head. "Right. Almost forgot. Let's go." The cafeteria opened a new food window. I followed Ronan out of the classroom, catching a glimpse of Thane standing there with reddened eyes, looking utterly lost. The next day at noon, he was still waiting. When I ignored him again and walked straight out, he softly called my name, "Sloane." I didn't respond. I grabbed my close friend from the neighboring class and rushed to the cafeteria. On the third day, he finally approached me proactively. "Let's go eat together," he said in a quiet, hesitant voice. I raised a brow, just about to reply, when Blythe suddenly rushed in from the hallway. Her eyes were swollen red. Clearly she'd just cried. Thane immediately tensed. "What happened, Blythe?" "Vance. He promised to go to the library with me, but he went to play basketball again." Blythe sniffled. "Don't be sad. Vance probably just forgot," Thane said gently, handing her tissues. His voice was so soft it practically dripped sweetness. "But this is the third time. I'll go with you to the library, okay? I happen to have books to return." The two of them fell into conversation, completely treating me as if I were invisible. I very considerately slipped out of the room and even closed the door behind me. The last class activity before the college entrance exam was an outdoor cookout. I had planned not to go, but Ronan kept nagging me from morning reading all the way to break time like a broken recorder. "It's our last class activity. Can't you at least give me some respect?" In the end, I was so annoyed that I had no choice but to get on the bus. The bus was noisy and chaotic. At some point, Thane had sat down in the empty seat beside me. His face was flushed an unhealthy shade of red, and a few strands of hair on his forehead were damp with sweat. Once the bus started moving, he tugged gently at my sleeve. "Sloane, I feel a little dizzy." I glanced at him. "I can see that." He seemed stunned that I was so cold, and a trace of hurt appeared in his eyes. "You used to always prepare motion sickness medicine for me beforehand." He really sounded feverish, his voice growing softer. "The last time I had a fever, you ran out into the rain to buy medicine for me. When my stomach hurt, you stayed by my side and rubbed it until it eased." With every sentence he spoke, my heart sank deeper. All of that clearly belonged to previous lifetimes. I hurriedly called out to the system in my mind, but all I heard was harsh static. Before I could think further, the bus suddenly jolted violently. A scream came from the front. "Landslide." The bus tipped uncontrollably to the right, plunging the cabin into chaos. Thane, who had been half-dazed a moment ago, suddenly sobered up. Almost instinctively, he lunged toward Blythe in the front row, shielding her with his back. I was thrown around by the impact. Ronan let out a wail while using his arm to block flying debris from hitting me. "Deskmate. This time you owe me homework copying rights all the way until finals," he yelled through gritted teeth. When the bus finally came to a stop, everyone helped each other off. Blythe was completely unharmed, supported by Vance. Thane, however, had a deep gash on his arm from protecting her, so deep the bone was visible. Blood had soaked through his uniform sleeve. He sat alone on a roadside rock, head lowered as he tried to tend to his wound. When he looked up toward Blythe, his eyes were dim with disappointment. Ronan nudged my elbow. "Hey, aren't you gonna check on him?" I was cleaning Ronan's arm wound and clicked my tongue impatiently. "Brother, worry about yourself first." The cotton swab soaked in disinfectant pressed against his cut, and Ronan yelped and hopped around in pain. Rubbing my ears, still ringing from his screaming, I suddenly felt a stare on me. I turned my head. Thane was staring blankly at me. He pressed his lips together, his eyes faintly red. I looked away and was about to turn around when he called out to me. "Sloane." His voice was hoarse. "I can't wrap this wound with one hand. Can you help me?" I let out a short, incredulous laugh. "What does that have to do with me? Go find the person you got hurt for." The grievance in his eyes vanished instantly, replaced by sudden brightness. "Are you upset because I was close to Blythe? I swear, she and I are really just." I cut him off. "You two could be mother and son, and it still wouldn't matter to me. Move. You're blocking the way." He froze. As he watched me walk away, his hand slowly dropped. He gave up on bandaging altogether and simply let the blood drip down his arm. The atmosphere on the return bus was much heavier than when we first departed. Students rested in small groups, no one speaking. Suddenly, Vance stood up and said that 500 yuan from the class fund was missing. "It was still in the outer pocket of my backpack before we got on," Vance said, frowning as he searched. The bus instantly exploded into chaos. No one knew who shouted first. Search the bags. The money definitely hasn't been transferred yet. Amid the noisy agreement, Thane quietly tightened his hold on his worn-out backpack. That tiny movement immediately drew attention. "Thane, what's in your bag?" a boy asked. Thane's face turned pale in an instant. "Just books." "Let us see." A few boys grabbed his backpack without giving him a chance to refuse. The bag was yanked open and everything spilled out. A few old books, a tattered wallet, and a stack of loose bills. "What's this?" Vance picked up the stack and counted. "Exactly 500. Thane shook his head frantically. "This isn't the class fund. It's my mom's medicine money for the month." "Yeah, right," a girl said sharply. "Everyone knows how poor your family is. Where would you get 500 yuan? All the students stared at him with disdain. In the end, Thane looked toward Blythe, his voice hoarse. "Blythe, you know I just got my part-time salary yesterday." But Blythe looked at him with disappointment. "Thane, I really didn't think you'd do something like this. If you need money, you can talk to us. How can you steal class funds?" Thane's eyes shattered instantly. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Watching him stand there so helpless, I suddenly remembered how, in every past lifetime, I was always the first to stand up and defend him whenever he was misunderstood. But this time, even though I didn't want to stay entangled with him anymore, I also didn't want to pretend I hadn't seen the truth. Finally, I raised my hand and pointed at the luggage rack. "Isn't that what you're looking for?" Everyone looked up. A stack of bills was wedged in the gap between the luggage racks. Silence fell over the entire bus. Students looked at each other, too embarrassed to speak. Vance was the first to react, murmuring an apology. Blythe's cheeks flushed red as she muttered, "Sorry." But Thane just stared at me, his eyes bright with a startling intensity. When we got off the bus, he hurried after me, breathless. "Sloane, wait." I stopped and looked at his flustered expression. The wound on his arm had begun bleeding again, staining the temporary bandage. "Just now, thank you." He pressed his lips together, speaking awkwardly. I nodded, stepping back. "It's fine. It just happened to be you. If it was someone else, I'd have pointed it out too. I just happened to notice the money." "I figured it out, Sloane." I had just taken a step when he grabbed me again. He spoke urgently, eyes flickering with fear. "I know I was wrong before. I shouldn't have always revolved around Blythe. I'll keep my distance from her from now on, I swear. Just don't ignore me. Let's try again this time, okay?" Hearing this inexplicable promise only confirmed what I had suspected. He really did have all his memories. Since that was the case, I didn't bother playing riddles with him anymore. "Thane." I cut him off directly, my voice calm, surprisingly calm, even to myself. "I remember everything. Just like you do. Every lifetime, I remember it all." All the color drained from his face. You remember." I couldn't be bothered to explain. I turned to leave, but he still blocked my way. "Sloane, What are you two doing?" Ronan suddenly appeared from who knows where, barging between us with his usual brash grin. "What are you whispering about? Let me in on it." I took the opportunity to pull away. "Nothing. We're going the same direction. Let's go." Ronan grinned and followed after me. What I didn't know was this. After I walked away, Thane remained standing exactly where he was, staring at the direction I left, lost and desolate. His injured arm hung weakly at his side. With his other hand, he slowly, bit by bit, picked open the wound that had just stopped bleeding, until fresh blood soaked down his entire arm once more. Ever since that day, Thane became like a silent shadow, appearing in every corner of my life. After school, he would follow 10 meters behind me, making sure I returned home safely. Every morning, a warm bottle of milk would appear on my desk. When it rained, an umbrella would already be waiting at the classroom door. All the careful kindness he once reserved for Blythe was now entirely directed at me. I tried returning the milk to him in person, but he only lowered his head and said, "If you don't want it, just throw it away. And the next day, it was there again. This continued until the day of the college entrance exam. After finishing the Chinese exam, I walked out of the test hall and overheard a few classmates whispering, "Thane didn't show up today. He missed the first exam. I heard his dad beat him so badly this morning he ended up in the hospital, lost a lot of blood." My footsteps faltered. In previous lifetimes, I would always arrive at his house early at this time, blocking his drunken father. But this time, I didn't. Later, I heard that while he was beaten black and blue, he kept murmuring, "Sloan will come save me." But this time, there was no Sloan. I easily completed all the exams. And as I walked out of the last test hall, the long missing system notification finally sounded. "Host, your request is approved. It'll take a bit more time before you can leave the world. I've prepared a plane ticket and money for you. You can take a vacation abroad." I looked up at the crowd outside, bustling with parents holding flowers to welcome their children. Among them, I saw Thane. He stood at the very edge of the crowd, gauze taped to his temple, his arm in a sling, quietly watching me. When our eyes met, his gaze brightened as if he wanted to walk toward me. But I quickly turned away and disappeared into the stream of people without looking back. I never expected that the system's a bit more time would mean 7 years. I completed my university studies abroad, found a good job, and lived a smooth, peaceful life. Occasionally, Ronan and I would mail each other local specialties, but aside from that, I had no contact with any former classmates. And I never thought I would meet Thane again. He had shed the youthful softness from before and now looked exactly like the version of him after marriage in my memories, except the once gentle brows and eyes were now tinged with gloom and obsession. He knocked me out from behind. When I woke up, I found myself imprisoned in a villa. A delicate silver chain was fastened around my wrist, just long enough for me to move around the room. The system's frantic scream exploded in my mind. "Host! How did he go off the deep end?" We checked multiple times. His core attributes were a gentle, sorrowful, devoted male supporting role. There was no Yandere or obsessive trait detected. I rubbed the aching back of my neck. I don't know about Yandere, but a man who killed himself 4 times just because the male and female leads got married. If that's not obsessive, what is? The system's tests were never reliable. Thane entered the room carrying a tray. He carefully set the food on the bedside table, his voice gentle. "You're awake." He sat beside me, his fingers brushing softly against my cheek. "I've searched for you for 7 years. I thought about you every single day." I turned my head away to avoid his touch. He stubbornly cupped my face, his voice low and rough. 7 years, every city, every country. I never gave up. I stared at him coldly. "So what if you found me?" His voice faltered, and when he spoke again, it was urgent. "I want to explain. I know, back then, I was irresponsible. It was my fault. So now you're imprisoning me as compensation." I cut him off, mocking. He fell silent. When he looked up again, his eyes were tinged red. "Wife, please believe me. I know I was wrong. I really do love you." The familiar address stunned me for a moment, then I laughed. "Thane, since you love me so much, tell me, our child back then, was it a boy or a girl?" His expression shattered instantly. Tears welled up in his eyes, his voice shaking. "I'm sorry. I wasn't worthy of being a father then. Whenever I think about that child, it feels like my heart is being sliced apart. I know it's too late to say this, but Sloan, please give me a chance. Let me spend my life making it up to you. Wife, I love you. I really love you." Watching his pained expression, I closed my eyes. Whatever. There were only 3 days left before I left this world anyway. For the next 2 days, Thane treated me with such meticulous care that it bordered on fearful devotion. He remembered all my preferences. Every dish he cooked was something I loved. Even the room's diffuser was my favorite white tea scent. If I told him to pour water, he poured water. If I told him to cut fruit, he cut fruit. Even when I made unreasonable demands, asking for foods that didn't even exist in this country, he somehow managed to get them for me. I told him to go east, and he would never take a single step west. The only thing he absolutely refused to do was unlock the silver chain on my wrist. Just a little longer. Every time I brought it up, he avoided my gaze. Let me make sure you won't leave. Every night, he would hold me from behind, burying his face in the crook of my neck, whispering over and over, "Sloane, Sloane." I never responded, like a puppet with no soul. Until the very last night, when he murmured my name yet again. After a brief silence, I softly said, "Go to sleep." I felt his body stiffen. Then he held me even tighter. A warm dampness spread across my neck. My collar grew wet with his tears. The next afternoon, his phone rang. The caller ID said Blythe. Leaning against the headboard, I watched his back grow rigid as he answered the call. Through the phone, I could faintly hear a woman's sobbing voice. She said she was getting married and hoped he would attend her wedding. After the call ended, he stayed silent for a long time. The phone screen stayed lit, showing he had already booked round-trip tickets. The departure was for noon today. The return flight was only 2 hours later. "Wife," he hesitated as he approached the bed. "Blythe, I'll just show my face and come right back." "Go," I said calmly. "I won't leave. I'll wait for you." He clearly hadn't expected me to be so agreeable. He froze for a moment, then rushed to explain. "I'll only be gone 2 hours. I'll leave right after the ceremony. Look, see, I booked round-trip tickets. I'll be back tonight." Watching him hurriedly pack his luggage, I couldn't help laughing. Some people, no matter how many times they start over, their instincts will never change. The moment he closed the door, the system's prompt sounded precisely on time. "Host, the exit passage has opened. You still have 3 hours to say goodbye to this world." "No need. Send me away now." "Are you sure? You still have 3 hours." "I'm sure." I closed my eyes. I don't want to stay a second longer. As his plane rose into the clouds, my world began dissolving into scattered starlight. In my final moment, I saw the note he had left on the bedside table. "Wife, wait for me. When I come back, we'll start over." The handwriting was rushed but filled with cautious hope. Unfortunately, there would be no starting over. This time, I left first. I asked the system to let me choose the method of leaving the world, and I deliberately chose the cruelest one. With my pain receptors shut off, I watched my own skin split open inch by inch, blood seeping from countless fine wounds, soaking the sheets beneath me. I had selfish intentions. After watching Thane leave so decisively so many times, I needed to return the pain to him. At the wedding venue, Thane sat among the guests, growing more and more restless. He sent me more than a dozen messages. None of them were answered. Every call rang unanswered until eventually my phone went straight to voicemail. "I'm sorry, I have to go." He suddenly stood up and rushed out of the ceremony, ignoring the shocked looks around him. On the plane, he gripped his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. A vague dread consumed him, the same kind of premonition he felt in previous lifetimes right before he chose to end his life. When he pushed open the villa door, the overwhelming smell of blood hit him instantly. His fingers trembled violently, unable to hold the doorknob steady. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, dark, dried blood trailing out from the crack. He gathered all his courage and pushed it open. What he saw made his heartbeat stop. I lay quietly on the bed, surrounded by a shocking, vivid red. Blood had soaked the sheets, even dripping onto the floor and drying into dark patches. "Sloane." He staggered to the bedside, his fingers shaking as he reached toward my nose to check for breath. A second later, he collapsed to his knees, letting out a guttural, soul-piercing scream. He pulled my cold body into his arms, holding me as if I were the last piece of driftwood keeping him afloat. "No. Sloane, please." Huge tears fell onto my face, mixing with the blood. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I really know it now. How familiar this scene was. Once, I had also knelt on a rooftop, begging him not to jump. Back then, I clung to his legs in the same way, sobbing until my voice broke. And what did he do? He gave me a sad smile, gently pried my fingers off him, and without hesitation, stepped into the air. You were begging me just like this back then. He choked out the words, guiding my cold palm to his cheek. But I actually did that to you. His sobs slowly quieted, dissolving into a hopeless murmur. So this is what it feels like to watch the person you love most die right in front of you. But by then, I could no longer see or hear anything. In the very last moment before my consciousness completely left this world, the only thing I saw was his blurry figure kneeling in a pool of blood. The system's soft chime sounded. Task world exit completed. Host, welcome back. After returning to my own world, I immediately took on a new mission. This time, I carefully selected an entrepreneurship script. A self-made businesswoman who fights her way to the top and becomes an industry giant. As for those lousy redemption scenarios, I was never touching them again. In the new world, I was busy expanding markets, developing products, and living a full, vibrant life every day. A big female lead career script was far more interesting than all that messy romance. That day, while I was reviewing the quarterly report, the system suddenly popped up to gossip. Host, you know what? Something huge happened to Thane's side. I didn't even lift my head from the documents. What? He killed himself again. Even more extreme than that. The system's electronic voice buzzed with excited gossip. He, cremated your body from that world, put the ashes into a custom glass urn, and hugs it to sleep every night. He abandoned his company and locks himself in the bedroom where you two last met. I raised a brow and kept flipping through the report. And the creepiest part, the system continued, lowering its volume. He somehow gathered every trace of you from all those worlds, photos, videos, even things you used. Everything is stored in a secret chamber. Blythe went to visit him, and he threw her out, telling her, "Don't disturb me and Sloane." TSK. I took a sip of my coffee, born an obsessive maniac, through and through. And the craziest thing, he somehow heard rumors that you might be in another world, so he started researching dimensional travel. Rumor has it, he sacrificed half of his lifespan just to. The system suddenly cut off, replaced by a sharp burst of static. Sensing something, I lifted my head and looked out through the floor-to-ceiling window. Downstairs stood a familiar figure. Thane. He had lost a lot of weight, his suit hanging loosely on him. His face was terrifyingly pale. But his eyes, those eyes were impossibly bright, locked onto me. The system stammered. He actually found you. I met his gaze calmly, even gave him a small smile. Then I withdrew my eyes and pressed the internal intercom button. Eloan, prepare the paperwork. We're moving up the acquisition of that tech company. Host, aren't you going to hide? He's literally downstairs. What's the rush? I signed the last document without even blinking. System, calculate this world's mission score. Completion rate 98%. Rating S, but host. Send me to the next world. I stood up, giving one last glance at the stubborn figure downstairs. I don't believe he has that many lives left to sacrifice. As the white light of teleportation wrapped around me, I saw Thane sprinting desperately toward the building entrance. Unfortunately, he was still one step too late. Once again, he failed to catch me. I closed my eyes. Go ahead and chase. No matter what you do, you will never catch up to me. Between missions, I found time to return and visit Ronan twice. The first time was for his wedding. I sat quietly in the last row, watching the once carefree school bully in a perfectly tailored suit, his hands trembling from nerves. When the ceremony ended and he spotted me, his eyes lit up instantly. He grabbed his bride's hand and rushed over excitedly. Sloane, this is my desk mate I always told you about. He beamed as he introduced me, then turned back to me proudly. This is my wife, Calliope. The bride smiled gently and handed me wedding candy. Ronan talks about you all the time. He said you always let him copy your homework back then. Looking at the happiness on his face, I suddenly remembered that rainy day in senior year, how he used his injured arm to shield me from falling debris, grinning through the pain. And now, he had found his own perfect ending. Good for him. The second time I returned was for his baby's 1-month celebration. The tiny chubby baby lay in the crib, blowing bubbles. Ronan was fumbling with formula milk, complaining, "This little ancestor is impossible to serve." Yet the smile in his eyes betrayed how much he adored the child. "How are you doing now?" he asked as he burped the baby. "Still drifting abroad all by yourself?" I nodded lightly. Across 5 loops in that world, the first 4 times I revolved entirely around Thane. Only in the last round did I unexpectedly gain Ronan as a friend. And somehow, this friendship became the warmest reward in that long, exhausting task. Before heading to a new world again, I went to say goodbye to Ronan. I brought a longevity locket for his baby, who grabbed the jingling charm and giggled non-stop. Heading overseas again, Ronan walked me to the airport, nagging non-stop. "Take good care of yourself. Call me if anything happens. And if you meet someone decent, don't be too picky, hurry up and settle down." His harmless nagging somehow filled the gap of not having parents. I listened quietly without interrupting. "Sloane." At the moment of farewell, he looked at me seriously. "No matter where you are, you have to be happy. If something happens, call me. No matter what it is, our desk-mate friendship lasts forever." I couldn't help laughing. I nodded and waved goodbye to him. As I turned toward the security checkpoint, I heard him shout behind me, "Remember to come back and visit often." Outside the plane window, the clouds looked like soft cotton candy. The sister asked softly, "A host, what kind of world do you want to go to next?" "Anywhere." I closed my eyes. As long as it doesn't have Thane. Because I knew, no matter which world I entered, there would always be a place where someone truly wished for my happiness. And that was enough.